Tonight, we have Ethan Sullivan joining us. He's the Assistant Dean for the undergraduates at the Carroll School of Management. He's been here since 2008, and he is responsible for providing strategic direction and integration of curricular initiatives in the undergrad program, including the Portigo program, which he teaches two sections per year. In addition to working in the Carroll School, Sullivan has also worked in first-year experience at Boston College, as well as Harvard University, Boston University, and New York University. Prior to entering academia, he was a brewer of craft beers in the Pacific Northwest. Dean Sullivan received his PhD from Boston College and his MA from New York University. He was a double major in English and philosophy as an undergrad at Boston College. And these majors greatly contributed to his love of reading. Ethan now lives in Needham, Massachusetts with his wife Jennifer and their 4 children. He is very involved in coordinating and coaching youth sports in Needham and trying not to tear his Achilles while playing soccer, hockey, basketball, lacrosse, and baseball with his active children and their teammates. His work as a parent and a coach intertwines beautifully with his teaching, all roles informing and enhancing each other. Teaching in Capstone is a microcosm of this pursuit, the pursuit for meaning and a life well lived. So once again, please help me in introducing Professor Ethan Sullivan.
Great. Excuse me. Thanks, Sean. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It's great to see everyone here. I'm truly humbled to be here. What a great event. I've never been to one before, and it's beautiful to be here. A couple of thanks that I want to throw out. First of all, thank you to our friends at St. Norbert's College and University of St. Francis and Dayton. Go Flyers. Thank you to Karen Kiefer, Ellie Zapata, and all the staff at C21. What important work you do at BC, and I'm truly blessed to be here. And especially thanks to Elizabeth Stieff and John Walsh, a couple of Carroll School students with C21 that have helped get me involved with the program. So thank you all. So I'm blessed to be here. And here we are. We're just a couple days away from Easter. And Easter at my house, 4 kids, as you hear, it's about chocolate bunnies and Easter baskets and Easter egg hunts and ham. But, you know, what I try to do is step away from that and really think about what it is for me. And for me, you can't have Easter without thinking of the death and resurrection of Jesus. And I think that on an abstract level, we can consider this, we do, theologically and intellectually. But what does it mean in our daily lives? How does the death of Jesus affect us in our daily lives? What difference does it make in concrete ways? And that's maybe what I want to talk about tonight, because for me, it's impacted in relationships. It's all about the relationships. That's where I see that making meaning in my life. So I'm going to talk about some relationships in my life, but first a little bit of a tangent, a little sidebar, because you know here we are at Agape Latte, and I know what a latte is. But what exactly is agape? And I think to understand this, the best place to turn is probably the New Testament, because it's a Greek word that occurs there quite frequently. And I think maybe most profoundly it occurs in John 3:16, which aside from being that sign that the dude in the rainbow wig holds behind the goalpost of football games, it's also probably the gospel in a nutshell. It's really the gospel of the gospel. And I think John 3:16 is the passage that for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. And that really is what agape is. It's a self-sacrificing love. It's a love that gives away to others. And that's really what we're here for. It's given away freely. It's given away unconditionally. So there's lots of types of love, and it's difficult to wrap our head around that word because I think it's one of the shortcomings of language to try to figure out what a word like that means. But agape is probably the highest form of love, and I think all other loves are subordinate to it. So agapic love, self-giving love is really what we're here for. Here for tonight, but here for in a more existential way. All right? So, for me, despite the posters that are all over campus today, I'm not a superhero, far from it. I'm probably more aptly described as an anti-hero, and maybe here's a story to describe that. So you have to go back to 3,000 miles away and you know, almost 20 years ago now, geez. So 3125 Northeast Schuyler Street, Portland, Oregon, 1995. I had just completed a year in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps and moved in with some college friends, some BC buddies, to this house in Portland. And we had a great life. We had a lot of fun together. We had a great group of friends. We would tease our friends back on the East Coast, and we would say, you guys live to work, but we work to live. And we would spend all of our time surfing and camping and playing in adult soccer leagues and ultimate frisbee teams. And we'd go hiking through primordial forests. And then on the way back down the mountain, we'd stop at the brew pub and have a couple of beers and play pool. We had this great thing going on, one of the happiest times of my life. And it was a great life, but there were parts of it that were missing. You know, my romantic life wasn't exactly what I had hoped it to be. I was coming off of a couple of relationships in which I was the other guy. One, it was the rebound. The other, I was literally the other guy while the boyfriend was traveling through Europe. And they weren't really fulfilling relationships. They were kind of, you know, fun at the time, but I think I was looking for more. Well, as luck would have it, about that time, through one of my Jesuit volunteer housemates, she was doing a second year, and one of her current housemates met us out one night at the barley mill in Portland. And so instantly, Jen and I hit it off. We just had this real connection. We were both from Connecticut. We grew up 30 miles away. We went all to the same concerts growing up. She went to Providence. I went to BC. We knew people that were alike. We just instantly connected. And so for the next few months, we would see each other all the time. Jesuit Volunteer Corps is like a cult. You know, it's like this cult of hostels all over the place. And you just travel throughout the Northwest, going to house parties and festivals and all this great stuff. And so I saw Jen all the time. We'd meet out at parties and you know, we'd flirt and we'd talk and we'd dance and sometimes we'd even smooch a little bit. And then at the end of the night, we'd go home. And you know, before that though, I'd make these grand plans with her. I would say, let's meet up tomorrow. Let's go to a movie, just the two of us, you know, without this big group. Let's meet up. Let's go to a museum. Let's go for a hike, whatever, just the two of us. And then inevitably, moments before we were supposed to meet up, I'd call her and I'd say, I can't go. And you know, why not? Well, I'm really hungover. Or my friends, you know, need me to fill in on their soccer team, or work needs me. It was all excuses. It was half lies. What I was really doing is avoiding. I think I was avoiding being the other guy. I think I was avoiding being the rebound guy. See, she too had a boyfriend from college back home that was kind of still in touch. And there's another rationalization I was making. Don't want to put myself out there. I want to just wear this suit of armor that I'm really good at wearing and you know, not let anybody in. Life was easier that way. It was easier to live this kind of protected, just go through the motions life than to expose myself and possibly get hurt. So that was kind of that's what I did. It was kind of like, you know, directions on a shampoo bottle. Lather, rinse, repeat, lather, rinse, repeat. Continued to do that. Continued to make plans and blow her off. Continued to see her until her Jesuit volunteer year was up. It was August. Her 1 year's done. She's moving back home to Connecticut. A couple of days before, though, she calls me up and says, we have to get together. Meet me at Cosmos, this little coffee shop in our neighborhood. And so I had this kind of mixed feeling of, oh, awesome, great, you know, with, oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. I knew that something was coming down the pike. So we get together, and I find Jen. I walk over, and before I could even sit down, she stands up, and she points her finger at me, and she says, I'm a catch and you missed the boat. And I said nothing. I couldn't say anything. But that was an epiphany. At that moment, I realized I really like this girl. She is a catch. She is something else. But I did miss the boat. She's getting on a plane tomorrow to move back to Connecticut, and I'll never see her again. So lots of shame, disbelief. I'm upset with myself, and really felt like I missed a great opportunity in life to let someone in who was very special and could have had a future with. But that's not the end of the story. There's a little window of hope. She knows that I'm driving cross country to visit my family in a couple of weeks. And she doesn't have room to bring all of her luggage on the plane. So she says, hey, I've got this one suitcase, can you bring it home and somehow I'll get it for you in Connecticut. I think, great, the window is open, awesome. And before I drive cross country and get there, the window opens a little bit more. I hear through the grapevine, through some of Jen's friends, that her Jesuit Volunteer Corps, her JVC placement, offered her a full-time job back in Portland. And that Jen had dropped the boyfriend, said it's over, it's done, and severed all ties and decided to move back to Portland. So this window is getting more and more open. So I say to myself, that's it. I'm showing up without the suit of armor on. I'm going to show up just me. I'm going to give her that suitcase, and I'm going to tell her what I think, tell her what I feel. And so we get there, she meets up with me, we exchange pleasantries, we exchange the suitcase, and she leaves. I did it again. But I had a feeling I was going to wimp out. So just before that, I kind of cracked open her suitcase a little bit, and I was an English major at BC, so I felt like I knew how to write. I wrote her this love note, crammed it up, and kind of stuffed it inside the suitcase. And it must have been a good letter because she did give me another chance. And when she moved back to Portland, she didn't trust me. Why should she? And she took it very slow, and so did I. But we got to know each other. And I gave of myself to her, and she gave of herself to me. And it was this gift of kind of self-sacrifice that allowed us to get to know each other, that allowed us to have a real, and this is hokey, but a real kind of courtship that we were able to grow together. And 20 years later, we're still married and we have our 4 kids, and it's a love story. And I almost missed it. I almost was too scared to experience this beautiful thing, this perfect love that's can only be found when you give up yourself. Because paradoxically, you have to give it away in order to get it. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that then. And it's taken me a while because it's not in my nature. It's not the way I was brought up, and it's not my personality to do that. I'm a guarded person. I kind of like that suit of armor. I like wearing it. And it's been a struggle for me. It's been a struggle for me with my own parents living that way, with my siblings, with friends that I've kind of lost touch with because of that passivity. But it's something that I do work on. So for me, I think you maybe have to go back a couple more stories. You have to go back to when I was young. And when I was young, I was an average 3rd grader and had my great group of friends and played sports and went through the motions at school. And one day, my parents got really upset with me. They said, "What did you tell the psychologist at school?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." They said, "They think that we're doing something to you. They called us in for this meeting." Well, it turns out that we had these standardized tests, and everybody takes them. I don't know what they take now, but for us it was the CATs, the California Achievement Test. And I guess I scored really well on them. And the teachers were saying, that kid scored really well because he's just kind of there. He's not a superstar in class by any means. So I had to go through this battery of psychological tests and these IQ tests and these behavior tests. And it turned out that I was way underperforming in school. And the psychologist thought it was my parents' fault, that they were doing something to me that was making me act out or misbehave or underperform. And I remember saying to the psychologist, no, I just want to be happy. And for me, happiness was kind of skating by and not being noticed. So that's kind of who I am and who my personality is, and why I maybe haven't put myself out there or been willing to open up. And maybe that's why I love Aristotle as much as I do, because it is all about the eudaimonia, the happiness. But for Aristotle, it's getting it through excellence. For me, it was just kind of getting it by staying low. So I say that because it leads to this idea of my childhood. It was really an idyllic childhood. And I adore my father. I adored my father growing up. He was perfect. He coached my sports teams, and he was always there for me. And it was really a wonderful relationship. But in a way that children have relationships with their parents. It was unconditional, but it wasn't on any deep level. I was a kid, and he was my dad. And that's kind of how it happened. And he was a superhero to me. And then I went away to college, and you go to college and you realize that parents are people too. And at this point, my dad, who had been on a real nice professional track, he had some real success in marketing, started getting downsized. He started losing his job. His first company was bought out. They just axed the old company's marketing team because they had their own marketing team. Then he got another great job, but economic downturn, the first thing on the value chain that goes is usually marketing. So, he gets laid off again. Now he's 50 years old or so, and it's really hard at the salary he commanded to find a job when you're 50 and someone younger can come in and do it for half the price. So he went through this series of being unemployed and underemployed, but I was in college. I was far away. If I did think about it, I think I felt a lot of shame. And this hurt me a lot, that I could be shameful of a father that I loved. I couldn't really come to terms with what this meant. But I mostly avoided it again. I'd call home once a week, and I'd talk to my mom. And if my dad did answer the phone, it was, "How you doing? How's the weather? Great. How's school? Great. Here's your mom." So real surfacey stuff. And, it's just kind of what our relationship was. So, ironically, it leads me back to Portland. So I'm in Portland again at this time in my life, and I get a call from my dad. He's in Palm Springs, California. His company now that he's working for is Hunter Douglas. They make window blinds and stuff like that. He's their executive vice president of marketing, so he goes out to the national meeting. And at the meeting, he decides that he's had it. He's just done. He's done with the rat race. He's done with working 3,000 miles away from home. He's done with traveling all the time. And he quits. He just quits in the middle of the meeting. And he comes here, and I feel sabotaged with him telling me this story. And instead of saying to my dad, "Man, let's talk," or "I'm sorry," or "What happened?" I basically close the door on him. Again, I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling like he's letting me down. I'm feeling like he's not perfect. And of course he's not. He's a human. But at the time, I'm feeling this feeling of being shamed by my dad. So I go through this excuse making again. And this time it's making an excuse to my dad. "Dad, let's talk later. You're going to be here all weekend. I've got this date with this girl that I really like." Meanwhile, ironically, it's Jen, who I've been blowing off and avoiding dates with, but now she becomes my excuse so I can blow off my dad. And he's around the rest of the weekend, but we never get back to that place. I think he tried to open up, and I just didn't reciprocate. I didn't give any love back to him. And so we talk about the weather, we talk about sports, we talk about my job, but we never talk about the big pink elephant in the room of what he's going through. And that kind of carried on for the next 10 years of my life, of having this relationship with my dad, of feeling like I was always on the cusp of saying, "Dad, I love you," or "Dad, let's talk," but never getting there. And two things happened 10 years later, which is now 10 years ago. One is I started having my own children. And two, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And these were both, in very different ways, wake-up calls for me. Luckily, my dad's cancer was not life-threatening. He was able to keep it under control, and he's in remission now. But still, for anyone who's experienced that, it makes you really think about how precious life is and how little time we have. And makes you realize that you don't want to have, I did not want to have any regrets. So I needed to act. I needed to turn this passive love into a much more active love. And at the same time, as I said, I'm having my own kids. And, you know, the joy that you get from being a parent is unlike any joy that I've ever had. And for me, that was finally understanding this self-sacrificing love. Because especially when they're little, they can't do anything. They're completely at your will and mercy for all of their basic human needs. So, you know, no one would choose to wake up multiple times in the middle of the night. No one would choose to put their hands in the stuff that's coming out of them from all ends. You know, but you do it for your kids. It's this total self-giving love because of the love you feel for them. And for me, you know, there was no greater feeling. My kids are a little bit older now, so they don't do this as often. But there is no greater feeling than coming home from a day of work to hearing the pitter-patter of little feet that run to the door and jump into your arms and say, "Daddy's home, Daddy's home." And I remember thinking one time when that was happening, man, this is how much I loved my dad. And this is how much the way I feel towards my kids, hitting the mic, is the way my dad felt towards me. And it just wrapped it all up that I had to stop living in this passive way and start being active. So between my own children and my wife and my father, I think those have been these moments for me of learning how to live and learning what agape is. And agape is that active love. It's hard sometimes to figure out how to bring that about. And I think for me, I'm far from perfect, and I still am figuring it out all the time. But there have been a couple of things that I've learned about how important agape is and how to seek it out. And for me, it comes down to forgiveness, that there's nothing so important that you can't forgive someone else. That all of the grudges that I've held or all of the shame that I've felt, it's really not worth it. You know, severed relationships usually can't even remember where they evolved from. And so just sometimes taking the first step forward to forgive was an important step for me towards that active love. Another thing I think is compassion. Is compassion going along with empathy. That we never really truly know what's going on with other people. The pain they may be feeling, the brokenness they may have, the suffering they may be going through. But we have to try to find out. Because it's really easy, I think, to love humanity. If anyone's ever read The Brothers Karamazov, it's my favorite book. And there's this wonderful part earlier on where this noble woman is just having this real crisis in life. And she goes to see Father Zosima, this wise elder. And she says, "Father, I'm really at a crisis because I love humanity, but I hate people. And I don't know how to deal with this." And you know, it's really easy to love humanity. It's easy to love an abstraction. It's easy to love a dream. But it's a lot harder to love real live human beings. It's harder to love that guy with road rage who just cut you off. Or the person who's talking on their cell phone really loud in line at the grocery store. Or your kid who's screaming at you because they can't have a sleepover for the 17th night in a row. Or your parent who's on your case about some grade you got on your organic chemistry exam. It's really hard sometimes to love people. But that's what active love is. It's about loving people, and not only those close to you, but those strangers as well. And the beauty in God, the beauty in His Son Jesus, is that they were able to love humanity without forgetting how to love individuals. One of the saints once said that if Jesus knew that He was going to suffer and die for only one person, that it would still be worth it to Him. And that's what active love is. Being able to love individuals so actively that you're giving of yourself and really having that compassion and empathy for them. So it's empathy, it's forgiveness, and it's also this idea of gratitude. I mean, we here at Boston College are so lucky to be at a Jesuit school. The classes I teach, I make everybody, you guys know this, I make everybody do the examen once a week. So we've got 150 minutes in a 3-credit class, 150 minutes a week. 5 of those minutes are going to be spent writing the examen. And my favorite part of the examen is gratitude, is starting with that idea of being grateful. Because there's so much to be grateful for. And if you take that step back and allow yourself to think, what am I grateful for? Well, it's easy to feel that love, and it's that type of love that you want to then share with others and give to others. And for me, thinking back to this past weekend, I think what I'm most grateful for this past weekend, what brought me the most joy was this moment I had with one of my sons, throwing a football with him for about an hour. We just threw it back and forth. We didn't say much. We just threw it. Every once in a while, he'd say, "Whoa, did you see that sick catch?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty easy. It was a really good throw, though." But, you know, we just went back and forth for an hour having this catch. And I'm so grateful for it because throwing the ball back and forth was a gift we had. And that is this gift of giving back and forth. Because once you don't throw the ball, once you hold onto the ball, the game's over. It's the back and forth which makes it beautiful. And that to me is what Agape is. It's giving love, and it's self-sacrificing love. And when I ask myself that first question of what does it matter that Jesus died for us, it matters because he died so that we could live. And the living that I had been doing wasn't really living. It was just wearing armor. And so now living for me is giving love to those around me. And so that's where I would like us all to think as we move forward. That's where I think life is all about. If there's a meaning of life, that's what it is. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you to our guests from other colleges. Thank you.